machine. Great. Okay. Good to know. Thank you for having us. Thank you for opening the space. I think that we can get started just before introductions to why we are here. And I think the why is Michael and I are both part of minorities, and we found ourselves in the finance and investment world. Michael is the expert. I am not. I will just tell you that in advance. I know nothing about investing. I am a first-time investor, so I'm learning on the way. But I felt the urge because we have a really good rate of female customers, but I felt the urge of open up the conversation for other people to take control of their finances and understand what's going on, so that they can secure a financial future for themselves. But let me get started. So I am Natalie Bonato, head of community here at tickr. I've been working in community building, community engagement for a decade now. It sounds like a very long time. I was employee number 1 for Airbnb in Brazil, and one of the first 3 to be hired for WeWork. Then back in 2018, I was relocated to London. There was a really nice project, so then I came to London. And 3 months after I wasn't here is when I met Tom, who is one of the co-founders of tickr. And he told me about this incredible company, there's a startup that he was building, and it was an impact investing, and he saw huge potential for community building. At that moment, in January 2019, tickr had about 1,000 users, but there was no way for me to join the team because my visa was attached to WeWork at the time. I had recently moved countries and I was 9 months pregnant. I really didn't need another change in my life. Fast forward 2 years, here I am today. I'm very happy, very glad to be part of something that is really changing the world. So that's a little bit about me, Mr. Tafula.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Natalie. My background is probably a lot less interesting in terms of international travel and working at one of the largest startups that we have out there, Airbnb and WeWork. But in terms of background, I've been working in the finance industry for about 10 years. That makes me sound really old, and I am partially old, but I went straight into finance after graduating from university, and I just love the industry. I've been working in the industry since I graduated as an undergrad. Prior to tickr, actually, I used to work in the venture capital industry. So I was in the part of the asset management business where you have asset managers investing in technology startups, so young, early stage companies. When I got into that industry, actually, I remember sort of looking around and thinking, there's no black people in this industry. I'd never met a black venture capitalist back in 2017 when I sort of started out. That's starting to change now. There's been a lot of initiatives that have moved the ethnicity proportions and ratios in the right direction. And we've also seen some great movement on the gender diversity of the venture capital investors. Why did I join tickr? Well, I've always been interested in finance. I've got a deep passion for technology, but I also wanted to work on something a bit more meaningful. And what could be more meaningful than working on getting more people to invest in the health of the planet and the well-being of societies across the world? And that's the reason that I ended up joining tickr. So loving it ever since. And hopefully there'll be something in the presentation that we can all take away and learn from. Thank you, Natalie.
No, thank you. I didn't say why I joined tickr. Tickr is like my forbidden love that we tried to get together for 2 years and now finally it's going on. But also similar to Michael, I think the mission is what really drove me to tickr. So basically they were 2 grad friends, and both of them, Tom and Matt, worked in finance for about a decade as well. But then they were frustrated by the lack of access and purpose that the industry provided. But they knew that if it was directed in the correct way, the industry could actually be a force for good and could actually accelerate positive change around the world. So tickr was built to plug this gap and founded on the principles of accessibility, education, and community. So basically, the goal is to redesign the investment management industry to make it sustainable for customers and also for the world. This is not a sales presentation, I promise you, but just for you to understand what we are doing here today. Some fun facts about tickr is, as I told you, back in 2019, we were 1,000 customers only. Now we are 2021 and we have over 130,000 customers. And behind the curtains, we're only 35 people. So I think that's a very steep growth, and it's really interesting to be part of something that is doing that in a sustainable way. We are also a B certified company. We have 3 themes: people, planet, and the combination of the 2. If you decide to invest in tickr, that's what you will find. And we have planted about 16,000 trees over the last 2.5 years. Now, jumping into the event, enough about me, you, and tickr. Let's talk about what we are doing here today. So our topic is diversity and investing. And before coming here and talking about what I think it is, I just did what every normal person would do. I Google it. So this is what I found. The first example is basically a noun, right? Diversity. The state of being diverse, variety. So when I read this, what I really see is that this is the definition of diversity as grouping or quantifying things within a range. And if you go further, we also have the definition of what diversity means when it comes to human beings. What would be the societal meaning behind it? So just summarizing and putting everything together, diversity can be the definition of diversity as a grouping, quantifying things within a range, or it can also be the definition of when it comes to the variety of human beings. This term, although it sounds something that everyone is talking about, it's quite new, it's fairly new. So I do feel that it should be something that everyone is aware of all the time. But if you really look at this graph, the mentions to the word diversity only start to pick up after 1950, and it peaks about 2 years ago. So it's not something really common that is embedded into our society yet. Hopefully we will change that. Okay, now find the definition of investing. So it's the action or process of investing money for profit. Not lots of news in here. I also researched on investor, what Google told me about investor. Investor can be a person or an organization that puts money into financial schemes to also expect some profit. Not lots of news in here. But what does a diverse investment means? So diverse investing is basically not putting all your eggs into the same basket, but making sure that you have a good mix of eggs in different baskets. So if one falls, you are not losing everything you have, right? In the screen, you will read it in a much different way, in a more formal way. So what happens if we want to have diverse investing within diverse investment? So when you look at them in abstract, it's all regarding finance. And when you ask what is diversity to a group of investors, they see diverse investing as a safe bet, right? A way to restructure the investment in a way to minimize financial risks. But when you look at the societal point of view and you look at diversity as a group of people and you combine investing with regards to people, the best way to make diverse investing under a diverse investment is to structure a series of investments in society which represents people who do not look the same to minimize financial risks. So when you look at the way the society created investing is a pyramid, whereby minority are making a large number of financial decisions for the majority, being the shareholders, infrastructure, etc. But fundamentally, we want to restructure that actually. You are making a diverse investment in people, so you're minimizing the risk from a societal point of view. I will get to a point. So you are investing in people from different backgrounds and experiences and different genders and different beliefs. So you don't have the maximum risk of having a small group with the most investment. You are spreading the risk within a diverse society. So you minimize the risk of something negative happening, like the financial crash in 2008, and you have more chance of having a more prosperous society. So if we stop a little bit and we think about what diversity looks like, would anyone be keen to share what diversity looks like in your mind when you hear the word? Anyone?
We've also got the chat box actually, so people can type into the chat area if it's easier that way.
No?
Hi, sorry, I'm just trying to get away from my little girl. She's not crying in the background. Sorry, I think if I hear that, I think that it means that everybody essentially has an equal opportunity and equal access to finance to be able to make those investments in the first place. I think that one of the things that is quite obvious, and from what you said there, Michael, as well, is that there are just, it seems like, and there are certain portions and populations of people within society that just don't either feel like they have the knowledge maybe to invest, or they maybe just don't have the capital to invest. So I think that if we can seek a way to make that the wealth distribution fairer, if you like, and more equal, then that will make a big difference.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kathy. Yeah, I think you are absolutely right. So what I did was I typed diversity on Google, and that's the image I got from it. There is a variety of people, there is a variety of colors and genders, lots of images that bring rainbow references. Some details show different religion beliefs, and all of them are kind of coexisting in an inclusive environment. Why finance can't be the same way yet? We are trying to get there. That's why this conversation is happening. Okay. Would anyone like to comment on this image? Nope.
I guess I can add another element to it. This is the first layer to the problem, which is looking at some of these attributes. But we can even go further, and I'll touch on this later on with some of the research we did at Diversity VC. We can start with kind of the most obvious areas: gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic background. But you can also go beyond that when you look at different teams. You know, if you have a team where everyone had the same education, everyone thinks the same way, no one disagrees about anything, that leads to different types of results, where you have teams where you've got different perspectives and views. But we have to tackle the first few layers of the problem, which some of these images allude to as well. And that's where a lot of the low-hanging fruit has to be done. It seems like it's easy work, but it's been difficult just to get, we'll get on some of the stats where you'd think some of these stats should now be a lot better, but they haven't got better. So we've got to start with the easier problem just before we can progress to the more challenging layers.
Thank you, Michael. For sure. We will talk more about this in detail later. Anyone else would like to comment? The next one is good, I promise. Okay, let's go. So if you close your eyes and try to imagine picture the image of an investor in your mind, how is it? What comes to your mind? Is this person dressed in some way?
Well, for me, I hate to say this, but I immediately think male, from my perspective, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And white, I should say, in my perspective. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With a suit, usually.
Yeah, exactly.
I also might think older as well, so age could come into that as well.
Very interesting. Yeah, let's look what Google gave me. So you're all right. All the images I got are from white men in suits. There is, I think, one older person in these images, but even the illustration, right? Even the drawing that appear in there is a white man in a suit. So I just want to ask you something. Michael, are you an investor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I am an investor as well. So you are a man, not white, but you're an investor. I am woman, not white, and I'm still an investor. Who else is an investor in here?
I am now an investor.
See? So I think Google should change what comes up when you type investor. Anyway, so a few slides ago, we talked about that investor can be a person or organization, right? So because I know nothing about the institutional investor, I will just leave that to Michael so he can guide you through what happened behind the scenes on the VC industry. Yeah, Michael, with you.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Natalie. I guess one of the objectives of this discussion is sort of raise awareness and let people know what the state of play is. Given my background, I used to work in the venture capital industry. Some people just call it the VC industry. Sometimes they'll call venture capitalists VCs. And there's two sides to the coin that you could look at. You could look at the people in the industry, the venture capitalists, the people who are investing in the next Google, investing in the next Facebook, the next Airbnb, the next WeWork. These are all venture capitalists, but what do they look like? Where do they get recruited from? That's one piece of the puzzle. And you could also look at the other side, which is where does the funding go? So what kind of entrepreneur gets funding from VCs? Now, of course, just to remember, we are looking at one portion of investing. This is institutional investing, so venture capital funds investing, as opposed to me as an individual buying some shares online or in a company. So we'll look at that a bit later on. But from an institutional investing perspective, what is driving the results in those Google images? What's driving the perceptions that people have for what a professional investor looks like? So we'll share some numbers here, and we'll look at maybe initially the first, the employee side. So what do venture capitalists look like? Natalie, if you just move on to the next slide. These numbers are from an organization that I volunteer at called Diversity VC. Of course, VC is short for venture capital. And these are some of the numbers that we found when we looked at the venture capital industry in the UK. So these are the individuals who are investing in technology startups. Starting from the left on the slide, we found that only 20% of these professional institutional investors are women. Now, that's compared against the general professional working population, where you have almost half of the professional working population that's made up of women, whereas in the venture capital industry, it's only 20%. But if you take that a step further and you look at, okay, let's look at the senior investors in investment teams on investment committees. So investment committees it's effectively a board or a group of people that sign off every investment. You can't get a deal done as a VC without getting investment committee approval. That group of people only has 13% of women. So again, a very small proportion from a gender diversity perspective. Now, when we look at the educational backgrounds of these individuals who are investing in technology startups professionally, 16% of them in the UK went to Oxford or Cambridge. Now, I went to Oxford as well because I just thought, you know what, this is going to help me open the door and get me into this industry that's very selective. So I'm not against elite education, but I think the recruitment habits and how recruitment happens in the industry is very biased towards people of a certain educational background. Now, 16% sounds like a small number, but if 16% of the people in the industry went to Oxford and Cambridge, if you then look at the general population where only 1% or less actually went to Oxford and Cambridge, that's a huge, huge disparity. And obviously I'm black. So when I go into the industry, I looked around and thought, well, is there anyone here that looks like me? These numbers here now, 3% of the VCs in the industry are black. That number's improved over time. And some people might look at that and say, well, actually, the general UK population is about 3% black and mixed race when you look at the general UK population. However, the majority of the venture capital industry is in London. A huge portion of it, something like 90% of the venture capital industry in the UK is in London. Now, the London black population is 13%, not 3%. So there's another huge disparity there. So these professional individuals who are providing funding to startups, they are not very diverse, which is why we get results like Google, which is why people think, well, actually, and a professional investor looks a certain way. But you can see there that they're not really representing the full makeup and the full breadth and depth of the society that we are in. If we flip the coin now and look at, okay, so we've looked at the professional investors, but where is the funding going? What kind of entrepreneurs get funding from these institutional investors? Again, this is data from Diversity VC, and starting from the left, we can see that less than 1 pence in every pound of venture capital funding that goes to entrepreneurs goes to all female teams. So, I mean, that is ridiculous, right? Less than 1 pence in the pound goes to all female teams in the tech ecosystem. Things get slightly better when you look at a team where you have a man and a woman, so mixed gender teams. About 10 pence in the pound goes to mixed gender teams. Again, it's atrocious, it's ridiculous, but these are the numbers. This is the state of play, and this is where we're starting from when we think about enacting change in the industry. In that third circle there, when we look at the volume of investments, so thousands of investments get made professionally into startups every year, only 4% actually have all-female teams, and actually something like 89% goes to all-male teams. So you have a startup team where it's all male. They receive the bulk of funding. And then from an ethnicity perspective, again, slightly biased because I'm black, less than 1% of venture capital funding actually goes to black people. Now, these numbers look slightly depressing, but I think it's important to kind of know where we're starting from. And without stating the obvious, I mean, tickr, for example, right? Our founding team is two white males. So we're not saying we are the best at things at the moment, but being aware of it. I think I might have some background noise somewhere. We've got. I think Ben might be worth muting your. We had some background noise there. Apologies for that. So yeah, I mean, every startup has diversity problems, right? So we're not perfect. We're working towards improving our diversity as well. But these statistics, even though they can be slightly depressing, it's a good starting point. And being aware of these numbers actually motivates me, Natalie, and a bunch of other people in the industry to think about ways in which we can make the industry more accessible across the whole asset class, not just venture capital, but any investing sector. How do we make sure that that sector is doing better to move these numbers in the right direction? Natalie, anything to add to that, or?
Yeah, actually, well, thank you very much for all of that, Michael. First, I think it was extremely informative. And second, I think there are things that we can do to change that. But before we go grab the problem by the horns and we find solutions for that, it's important to understand where it all came from, right? But I just remember about a customer who his job, it's a volunteering opportunity. So he goes into schools to talk about the finance world to children, to encourage them to work in finance, to get them interested in doing that. So his name is David, and hopefully I can start doing that with him in the next couple of weeks or months, because it's important to bring awareness about diversity and how the market can be on early days as well. So it's not only for you to start investing, it's not for you to invest, but also to bring more diversity to the market as employees as well. Okay, so basically, I think there is a conclusion to that, right? The financial and investment world was created to sound complicated and difficult. So it benefits the rich, make them richer, and just maintains the wealth disparities. But where did it come from, and what are the numbers that we have today? So we have different types of investment gaps, right? We have the gender investment gap, we have ethnicity gap, we have LGBTQ plus gap. So there are different ones. So interestingly, we have a 15 billion gender investment gap in the UK. women hold about half of the investments of the men. So 14.3 billion investments for women and 29.3 billion investments held by men. And it starts young. So just 4.4% of millennial women have an investment product in comparison to 7.5% of millennial men. So it starts there. Then we have the ethnicity gap. So some of the issues are explained by the demographics of the community. So for example, Black people are generally younger and live in cities, so may have higher living costs and have less opportunity to build wealth. Plus there is the pay gap. It also reflects on inequalities around education and opportunity. So just to give a number to that, so Black, African and Bangladeshi communities have 10 pences invested for every £1 of a white man. So this is also a huge disparity, right? Now, what are the other things that we go through when we're seeking financial advice? So for financial advice, there's research by Fidelity, and they found that only 12% of young women are seeking financial advice. This research was done with about 1 million women, and there is a huge gap in there, and there are many reasons for that. There is the motherhood, then after they become moms like me, it's just really hard for you to go back to work, or you take a part-time job, and then you will reduce your monthly income. And if we consider the last 2 years, the pandemic has impacted significantly women. We were hit the hardest by job losses for the same facts. We are moms, we have to take care of our homes, we have to. We have been negatively affected by, again, furlough, childcare. So I'm really curious to see what those numbers will look like in 20 years, because for the last 2 years during the pandemic, it's been, as Michael said before, ridiculous, resulting in only 12% of women seeking for financial advice. And then last but not least, in this slide, we have 32% of students in the LGBTQ+ community reporting discrimination from financial advisors. So they not only are making less money, but when they are looking for help, they feel discriminated. They feel that that's not an area that they should be interested in. So it also creates this distance between them and the financial world. So the reasons why are obviously pay gap. It's not just lower salaries that place many women at financial disadvantage. Women are less likely to make sound investments with the money they have, but this problem also starts in the childhood. There is 17% of the parents that think that their boys are more intellectual and more intelligent with money than with their girls. And if you look at the media as well, 65% of all articles directed to finance for women give advices like you are excessive spenders, and encourage women to budget better and to impose spending control for themselves. While 75% of those articles, when they are directed to men, they are strongly advising men to build wealth and get their money invested. So it is everywhere. It's just not a very good show to watch. Then if we go to the ethnicity, I'm finally saying this word correctly. I need to have a class right before this so I could say it properly. So basically, if the ethnicity groups saw the same rate of career progression as white men, the UK economy could be 24 billion bigger. So the Resolution Foundation think tank found Black male graduates were being paid 17% less than white male graduates, the equivalent of about £7,000 over a year. And for Black women, the pay gap was about 3,000 over a year. This is not, again, not looking good. For the LGBT community is also really bad. So lesbians earned 11% less than heterosexual women, and gay men made 32% less than heterosexual men. What's going on with the world? So there is another problem to add to this cake. and is the generational wealth and knowledge. So basically, if you were born in a rich family and you have wealth, your family will teach you how to maintain that, right? They will teach you how to make more money. They will make connections for you. So it just makes the way easier for you. But if you were born in a poor family and your family didn't have all this knowledge, they don't have all these assets in life, they don't really have this knowledge to pass on. So it's on to us, it's on to me, it's on to you to change that. So it's better to start saving small and now than ever, and just waiting for the next generation to wake up for that. And then two other things that I like to say that they are together, which is confidence and accessibility. As I mentioned before, the industry wasn't created to sound easy. It was created to sound complicated. So there are lots of jargons. And if you ask the question, you feel embarrassed. So people don't really know where to find the information without being made to feel stupid and to feel like the dumb person in the room. I've spoken to many customers over the last months, and they had a really hard time understanding what finance means because they don't know where to find credible information to educate themselves about investing. So hopefully we can change that. Hopefully this type of talk can bring awareness and you can feel that this is a safe space for you to ask your question. And there is a way to change all of that. We can flip the coin and we can change the course of the industry. Michael, how can we change that?
Well, I mean, I don't have all the answers, but I've always thought about this as it's one of those things that seems like an insurmountable problem, right? Because we've looked at all the various statistics. Some of these trends are embedded in structures that have been around for multiple generations, right? But the way I look at it is, look at it in two ways. The first thing is awareness. The next thing is action. Awareness, we now have some credible data on things like the investment gap, on the employment, lack of employment diversity within the industry. So we know all these numbers, but now we have an opportunity to start taking action. And what we can do in terms of action, I mean, everyone goes about it in different ways, but some of the things that I've seen work, if you look at the employment perspective, how do we get more diverse people to work in the investment world or asset management industry or the finance industry? One thing you could do is have blind applications. So in my previous role, we had a platform called Be Applied, where all the candidates that apply for a job, their names are stripped out. And all you see are the responses to specific case study questions. And then the people who are hiring the individuals vote on the best answers as opposed to looking at someone's name or educational background. And the reason why that's important is a couple of years ago, there was some research that was published on the BBC that showed that if you have an ethnic minority sounding name, you have to make something like 10 times more applications to get a call back. And that data rings true because I have friends who have Middle Eastern names, African sounding names, and they've told me that they have to make way more applications just to get a response because of the name that they have. So that's one of the solutions to some of this, some of the challenges we have in terms of diversity. Just take blind applications. Another thing is just basically what Natalie was talking about in terms of accessibility. How do we make things more accessible, whether that's from industry jargon that professional people in the investment world love to use to make themselves sound more clever than they really are? How do we get rid of that type of inaccessibility in terms of the language that we use? But then also think about things like these social networks that are hard to break into. So I had to go to Oxford because I thought this would be the way that I could break into some of these doors, and it definitely helped. But it should not have to be that way because there's a lot of people who can't afford to go and do a master's at Oxford or who might not have the same opportunities that I did. So how do we think about making things more accessible? One of the organizations that I volunteer for, Diversity VC, we have an internship program that we do every year where we source lots of diverse people, not just in terms of gender, but ethnicity, socioeconomic backgrounds, even age, because some people in the investment industry think that you want to get lots of young people to work in tech, when actually you can also get older people who have substantial work experience. And I think those are just some two sort of tangible, credible examples that we're thinking about. But just going back to the point of making diversity a key topic, it's not just about doing it for kind of like it's nice and fuzzy and it's nice to have diverse people, but actually it's great for returns. It's great for productivity. It's great for having the best ideas. It's great for, from an investing perspective, if you think about this idea of diversifying your portfolio, investment managers kind of call diversification a free lunch, because it can boost your returns while also actually mitigating your risks. So, there's a kind of a very nice, fuzzy, I guess, warm feeling to being more diverse, but there's also actually a more selfish perspective, which is, if you want to have the best performing teams, if you want to generate good returns relative to the risks that you're taking, then diversity is an asset worth investing in. Natalie, I don't know if you want to add any more to that, but those are the thoughts I thought would be interesting to share.
No, I love that. I think we can actually open the conversation and see what everyone think about that as well. But before we do that, I think I just want to add that the industry can also create different products, like cheaper products, to allow people to start investing with less money. So they don't need to have a huge amount of money to be able to start their investments. They can just start small and get the feel, and then learn with their mistakes without really losing everything they have. And then we can get the learning curve started as well. And then the next question I have that we can all discuss together is, what can you do today to change this reality? Instead of leaving that for the industry, what are the things that you can do? And my 2 pence contribution to that is, you can secure a financial future for yourself, and you don't need to be rich to start investing. Also, your profit doesn't need to come at the cost of our planet's scarce resources. Just look through your pension, for example, see where your money is going to. If there is any fossil fuels companies, if there are other companies that are actually like tobacco, they're actually not doing good for people or planet. And make sure that you take control of that. You can have a voice in there. You can choose where your money is going to as well. And it's better to start small now than never. So read a lot, learn a lot. Women, you are not bad with money. So if you have something to spare, just make sure that you save it. So in the future, you will harvest the good fruits. And I think that now we can open this conversation to everyone if people want to share your experiences. So what do you think you can do to change this? And what do you think the industry could do to change this? Anyone?
I haven't got, like, just take away that. I've got a couple of other points that I wanted to kind of ask, if that's okay, just to kind of get your opinion. So I'm young, female, Asian girl, and I don't invest at all. And one of the reasons why I don't invest, probably there's a few, is like knowledge and probably security. Like I always think of like investing as a risk, and I think, that's my perception, so I could be wrong. Yeah. But I think that for me, it's about having that confidence in what I'm investing in and what it actually means. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like confidence that I'm not going to lose.
So that's a good question.
So that's something that I wanted to kind of, I think that there's a lack of knowledge, but that's something that I wanted to like push back on you and ask, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually. And it's not just, this is something that's quite common for anyone that hasn't invested. There's an element of accessibility, going back to the point that Natalie was making on accessibility and making investing less intimidating. Now, I'm going to caveat what I'm about to say, because I know that we have our legal compliance team. What I'm going to say, this is not financial advice. The value of investments can go down and up, the usual caveat. But on the awareness piece and the accessibility piece, I think one thing that gets lost in the knowledge that's out there is that even by choosing not to invest, you're taking on a different risk. So when you're investing, you're putting your cash somewhere. When you don't invest, you're leaving your cash in the bank. And then your cash then is at risk of inflation. So every year inflation will be anywhere from 2, 3, maybe 4%, potentially this year with the reopening of the economy and COVID. Then where'd you get that information? You know, how easy is it to get the information around the idea of inflation eating away at your savings versus having your money invested elsewhere? That information is out there, but it's usually obscured on various investment websites or platforms where it's hard to get that knowledge in an easy and accessible way. So I think one solution to that is just making this information more accessible, making it easy to digest, and being able to understand people's concerns around risk, and avoiding the jargon and complication, just to make sure that we're not confusing people or making the industry look more intimidating than it really is. Natalie, sorry I jumped in there. I'll let you add to it.
You are the expert, not me, but I can only share my own experience with you, Noshin. I think that your concerns are extremely valid, and they do represent the majority of our, I would say, female customers base. I've been talking to many women over the last couple of weeks, and that's a common theme that I find. So lack of knowledge. You don't feel secure and confident about doing it. You find it risky and you lack confidence. So the same happened to me, right? So first thing is I'll give all of you a PDF. The name is Investing Without the BS. It's a document that our founders came up with. And basically they are the 4 principles of investing in a simple way that just clicks, just helps you to understand what this is about. Okay, it really helps me. But I'll tell you what I did. So when I first started investing, I started investing £10 a month, right? So I could get the feel of the market, and then I had time to look for it. And also I didn't want my money to go somewhere that it would damage the road. So that's when Tom came talk to me. tickr was like what I was looking for. Then at the same time, I didn't know if my money would grow or if I would lose everything. So I just did a test, and I would just share my test with all of you. Don't kill me. So what I did was I got the same amount of money and I put in another app called Nutmeg, and the same amount of money, and I put a tickr because my husband works for Nutmeg and tickr was trying to hire me. So we decided just to do a test, put the same amount of money for the same amount of time. That time was 2 months. First mistake, okay? So what I did was after 2 months, I analyzed tickr performed better. So I took all the money out of Nutmeg and put in tickr. Second mistake, because, well, I'll tell you later. And then what happened from that day on is there was a market crash that went for 6 months in a row. And my money was just disappearing. It was just going down, 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 down. And I had to have lots of emotional resilience not to take the money out of tickr and then crystallize my loss, which is another term that I learned when I was going through all this mess. So what were my learnings? The first one, 2 months is not enough. So true investing is when you leave your money there for a very long period of time. If you're investing for a short period of time, that's more like gambling than investing. So ideally, you would put your money there and you would forget about it. So mistake number 1, lesson learned, check. Second mistake, I took all the money and I put in one basket, tickr. So when I saw my money going down, I got desperation mode. I just wanted to take my money out so then I wouldn't lose anything anymore. So that's when I started to research, because that was also in my mind. So I invested that amount. Now I have much less than this. If I remove my money, what's going to happen? I'll have to work again to build the same quantity again. So when I started to researching, it's when I learned about crystallizing losses. So you just leave your money there, because with time, so by the end of your 3 or 5 years, what happens in between won't really matter. So it's really like starting small. Don't put all your eggs in one place and think long term. But that's only me sharing my experience, and I will share it's a book that I will share with all of you for free, so you have access to it. It's usually only for tickr customers, but I think it's common knowledge and everyone should have access to it. It just make your life much easier.
yeah, it'd be great if you could share that. That would be great. That would be amazing. If you sent that to me, then I can send it out to everyone on the group in an email, if that's okay.
That's great. Yeah, I will do that.
No, that's great. Like that's it, you've got made some interesting points there, that it is long term, and you know, you've got to think of, I think it's easy to just go, you want to see the results there and then, but like you said, that is gambling. But I think what I've taken away is like starting off small and then building that confidence with something small and seeing results, and then over time you end up kind of putting more into it. So no, that's definitely interesting.
Thank you.
So I have a question. So I've just started investing, and obviously, can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So my query is, if you don't have a lot of capital and you've said, you know, you've got to diversify your account and, you know, invest in various stocks, and every month you're sort of adding to that. Even if you do it for a period of time, it seems to me, from when I'm looking at the stats and the percentages of my losses and gains, that it'll take me a very long time to make any significant impact on my wealth. Is that the wrong outlook? Because it seems like you need a lot of money to have a good return on investment.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes. I mean,
Michael, yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, that's absolutely the right intuition. When we look at the long-term historic trends of returns in the equity market, so if you look at the whole stock market, global stock market, or maybe the US market or the UK market, returns over the very, very long term have been anywhere from 5 to 8% year on year on average over a very long period of time. So that is not it's a meaningful return on a larger amount. And if you look at how compounding works, so where you earn interest on your initial deposit and then you earn interest on your deposit, the compounding effect takes some time to kick in. But when it does kick in, it can rapidly start to scale up your returns. So investing is always a long-term endeavor. In the last couple of months, we've seen a lot of crazy things happen in the market where, I mean, I've got friends making money in all sorts of weird things, but that involves taking a lot of risk alongside that, where I've got friends who are just making crazy money and friends who have just lost, who have been completely wiped out. But it's just been a crazy year from a returns perspective. And I think today, and in this year in particular, expectations of returns have been very skewed because of what all these crazy gyrations in the market. But sort of principled long-term investing is a slow, steady, kind of boring affair. And those returns do start to accumulate and compound over the very, very, very long term. So you do have the right intuition that, you know, you're going to start small, you're going to see huge returns, but over a very long period of time, the compounding effect kicks in. And again, this is not a sales pitch, but we've got a kind of a financial projector in the app, in the tickr app, where you can see that compounding effect where the returns start to ramp up much later on as opposed to initially, because you're earning returns on top of the returns that you build up each year. Does that answer the question? I feel like I might have waffled on a bit longer than a plan.
Yeah, in some ways it does. It's still, I guess in my mind, you know, we're talking about trying to bridge that wealth gap. So it seems, certainly not in my time will that happen if I continue to invest in the way that I have been investing. I mean, I've even started looking at like cryptocurrencies because the returns are better, but obviously the risk is a lot more. But if normal investing is already quite difficult to decipher, I mean, crypto is just on another level altogether.
I was hoping you wouldn't even mention the crypto word in this call. I get crazy about crypto. But
which
I mean,
I'm really interested in, actually.
It's an exciting technology. From a technology perspective, I think it's a really interesting technology.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not giving financial advice. I'm not going to comment on whether you should be in crypto or not. It's an interesting technology, but going back to this concept of diversification that we've been talking about, where you want to have a mix of things and you never want to have just one type of thing, because then you get more risk and you don't get the same kind of reward profile. With crypto, again, I've got friends who have made silly money in crypto. I've got friends who've been wiped out completely because they overexposed themselves to crypto in pursuit of those larger gains. And that's a very sad story. So it's an interesting technology, but think about how much exposure makes sense for your individual situation. I'm of the view that, you don't want to put anything in there that you would not be okay if it went to zero, because it can go to zero. And I've
Yes,
seen
of course. Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
But you made a point around, will you kind of realize your long-term investment goals? What's your investment horizon? How long are you thinking that?
I mean, currently, it's 5 years and longer. So I'm not looking to pull anything out for the next 5 years or so. And pension, I'm looking towards pension. I'm middle-aged, I'm in my 40s. So that's how sad it is. So that's how long I have to give it.
Not at all. I mean, the sooner you start, the better. There's something that we always say in the investment, which is, the best time to start saving and investing for your future was yesterday. The next best time to start is now. So as long as you've started, you're making great strides.
Okay, thank you.
If I can just add something to that, Claudine, I kind of started the same way, and I was saving just £10 per month for a year. And then I was like, I think that in 5 years, I won't build lots of wealth in there. So what I did was I just changed my strategy, right? And instead of putting £10 every time I had something just sitting in my account, I would just put in my investment account. And then I could see the number growing a little bit faster. So your life situation also changes with time, and then you can redo your strategy. You can rethink on how you're going to save and invest your money as well. And as Michael said, the ideal world is a world where you don't put all your bets into one player, but then you can decide. But when you have enough to do it, right, you don't want to end up with nothing for yourself. So yeah, just try to rethink your strategy as the time goes by, and then your life situation, your life circumstances also change.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Do you have more questions? That was great.
Yeah, here, not exactly a question. Do you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, well, just a thought that I was having here, because, I'm learning and discussing about investment with this group, people I don't know. And then I just realized I never discussed about it with friends. I don't know about your groups of friends, but I feel that in my bubble, it seems like a taboo, discuss personal finances and, just arriving at a bar and saying, hey, how's your savings? So what are you investing? Do you know how to do it? Something like that. And I guess that I just realized how that is directly related to diversity, because I have loads of women friends, and I never got the chance to talk with them about it. I've been investing for some time because my father taught me very little about it, and I just realized that I don't know if any of my friends know something about it. So regarding diversity, why not starting with my own friends? Just this thought.
I'm on mute, of course. Thank you for bringing that up, Juliana. I 100% agree. I have more opportunities to discuss investing now because I'm a mother. So when you're talking to other mothers and you're talking about your children's future, this topic naturally comes up. But before that, I never discussed it with anyone, although there's lots of people who are interested in how we moved to the UK because that's a transition that lots of people want to do. You just move across the ocean, just move abroad. Then people are really interested about how we planned, how we made it happen. But money itself, it's a taboo. And I think that we need to find a way to normalize this discussion.
I agree with that as well. Like, I don't speak to any of my friends about investing at all. It's widely talked about in the office, but I work with a lot of men. So that's why we hear about it quite a lot. But amongst, like, in my social environment, I don't hear about it at all. So yeah, really good point to think about.
Yeah. There is a company, actually, the name is Female Invest, and they talk about this a lot. They have lots of really nice talks about how women can get started with their finances, how they can get started investing. They give lots of suggestions and financial advice, really, just to empower women how to do that. Perhaps it's a place where we can learn how to get those conversations started in our own groups. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just like historically, women don't like to talk about money because, I don't know, maybe people feel like it's being a bit big-headed, maybe, if they're talking about how much money maybe they earn and then how much money they could perhaps look to invest. Whereas men historically, and this is a bit of a generalization, but, you know, if men talk about money, it's very normal in their circle, but it's just very different in ours. And I think maybe having those conversations, like you say, and opening up the mindset that women have that maybe is different around money in general, as opposed to just investing, would be a good place to start as well.
Yeah, I think so too, like Kathy. And just to add to that, I don't think like, just back onto the point of my friends, I don't think they actually do invest. That I don't think they know how to invest either, or so that's why the conversation isn't there, because none of us have a clue. So, you know, that's just to kind of on the other side of it, you know, it might not be about talking about money, and that might be kind of a sensitive subject, but also we just don't know what we're talking about, so we don't want to look silly in front of each other.
Yeah. I mean, we have book clubs. Why don't we have investing clubs where we just share about our knowledges and what are the new things that we learned in the past week? I think that's a really good start.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I think we are on time, right? Time's up.
Brilliant. No, that's
great.
Wow.
That was an interesting conversation. Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions, for joining today, for sharing your experiences. Thank you, Nosheen, for the invitation. Thank you, Michael, for joining us. It was really rich. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you all.
Well. Thank you. Take care. This will be recorded, so we'll put it out there. And just before you go, if you could send over the links to PDF to me, Natalie, then I can send it out to the people that have attended.
Yeah, for sure. I will do that. As soon as we finish this call, I will send it to you.
That's great. That's great. Well, lovely to meet everyone, and thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Bye.